There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than words, when the world grows still and all that remains is the quiet murmur of your own thoughts. You sit there, not broken, not lost, but suspended in something deeper, a feeling you can't quite name, a sorrow that doesn't belong to any single event yet moves through you like a tide that knows the shape of your soul. Most people call it weakness. They tell you to move on, to let go, to be strong. But strength, as the world defines it, is often just armor, a way to hide from the truth that we are all, at some level, trembling. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And perhaps that is where your story begins, in the ache you keep trying to silence. Because the truth is, feeling deeply is not a flaw, it is the doorway to knowing yourself. And what hurts in you is not your enemy, it is your guide. There is something sacred about the person who feels too much, because they are the ones who stand closest to the pulse of life. They sense the subtle shifts in tone when someone hides behind a smile. They carry the quiet grief of others as if it were their own. They bleed empathy into a world that rewards indifference. But here's the paradox. The more deeply you feel, the more the world mistakes your depth for fragility. They see tears as surrender, reflection as hesitation, and solitude as loneliness. Yet beneath that misunderstanding lies your greatest strength, the capacity to witness the truth without turning away. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are human, fully, painfully, gloriously human. And in your sensitivity lies the seed of wisdom, for it is only those who truly feel the storm who can ever find the eye within it. What if your emotions aren't proof of your fragility, but evidence of your awakening? Because the moment you stop numbing your pain, the moment you stop apologizing for your tears, you begin to remember what it means to be alive. And that is where all transformation begins, not in denial, not in the mask of strength, but in the courage to feel and to keep feeling, even when the world tells you not to. There is a quiet tragedy in the modern soul. We have learned to smile while bleeding, to keep walking through life as if nothing aches. We post our happiness in filtered fragments, sunlight over coffee, laughter frozen in pixels, and hide our storms behind closed screens. We've mistaken numbness for peace and distraction for healing, but beneath the surface of our curated lives, there's a deep exhaustion, a kind of spiritual weariness that comes from pretending too long. We are haunted, not by ghosts, but by the parts of ourselves we've exiled. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unseen half of our psyche, the reservoir of everything we refuse to acknowledge, our jealousy, our fear, our quiet desperation, all the feelings we were told were too much, and so we bury them. We smile through pain. We laugh a little louder to drown out the echo of our emptiness. We call it self-control, but it's really self-abandonment. Each time you suppress your truth to be accepted, a piece of you fades. Each time you silence your sorrow because others have it worse, you teach your heart to distrust its own voice. And slowly you become a stranger to yourself. There is a peculiar loneliness in wearing a mask for too long. At first it protects you, but eventually it begins to suffocate you, because the mask may hide your pain, but it also hides your possibility. We live in a culture that worships positivity as if light is the only sacred thing, but light without shadow is blinding. It burns without illuminating. The denial of pain is not healing, it is stagnation dressed as strength, and no soul can grow in the soil of suppression. Imagine standing before a mirror that shows not your reflection, but your truth. What would you see? The smile that hides the tremor in your voice? The ambition that masks your fear of insignificance? The love you give away freely, yet never receive in return? The mirror does not lie. It does not flatter. It does not care about who you think you should be. It only reveals who you are. And that, for many, is unbearable. So we turn away. We dim the lights. We bury the mirror under the noise of busyness, hoping the silence won't catch us. But it always does, because the shadow does not disappear when ignored. It waits, patiently, in dreams, in sudden anger, in the quiet ache that returns when the world falls asleep. Every feeling you suppress becomes a whisper in your unconscious, and those whispers will keep calling your name until you answer. You see, the real suffering does not come from pain itself, but from the war we wage against it. When we resist our emotions, we create the very prison we seek to escape. Jung said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The struggle is not between you and the world. It is between you and the parts of yourself you refuse to face. And yet, somewhere within that struggle, a question begins to form, gentle but unrelenting. What if everything you've hidden from was never meant to be your enemy, but your teacher? When the mask finally cracks, when you can no longer pretend that fine means anything, you are brought to the threshold of something sacred, the confrontation with your shadow. It is not a comfortable meeting. It is the quiet reckoning that occurs when your soul grows tired of running. You begin to see that the darkness you feared was never a monster, only a mirror, reflecting what was too painful to accept. Carl Jung Philosophy teaches that within the shadow lies everything you've disowned. Not only your rage and envy, but also your passion, your courage, your forgotten light. We think the shadow is a wound to be healed, but in truth, it is a part of the self, longing to return home. The shadow is the container of your unlived life. Every emotion you denied, every dream you buried, every truth you swallowed to keep the peace, they live there, waiting. And when you finally turn toward it, you begin the process of becoming whole. Wholeness is not the absence of darkness. It is the union of light and dark in honest harmony. It is when your heart no longer rejects what it feels, but learns to listen. The modern world mistakes happiness for wholeness, but happiness is only one color in the spectrum of being. Wholeness, Jung said, is the integration of opposites, the marriage of the conscious and the unconscious, the seen and the unseen, the angel and the animal within us. We cannot call ourselves complete if we love only our virtues. To truly know yourself is to embrace your contradictions, the tenderness that hides behind your anger, the love that trembles beneath your fear. Imagine your psyche as a vast landscape, a valley of light bordered by mountains of shadow. To climb those mountains is terrifying, yes, but at their peaks you find something rare, perspective. You see that the parts you called bad were not evil, they were wounded. They sought attention through pain because they were never heard in love. Your jealousy was a sign of your longing for recognition. Your anger was the fire of unexpressed truth. Your sadness, proof of your ability to care deeply in a shallow world. Carl Jung Philosophy invites you to stop fighting what hurts and start understanding it, because pain is not the opposite of growth. It is its catalyst. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" Perhaps the same question applies not to the world, but to your suffering. Is your suffering necessary? Yes, if it awakens you. Yes, if it strips away illusion. Yes, if it reveals what is real beneath the noise of who you think you are. The shadow, once seen, transforms. It no longer drags you down, it guides you inward. Like a lantern carried through the dark, your awareness illuminates what once terrified you. This is the revelation. You were never broken. You were divided. You mistook the silence of your pain for emptiness, when it was actually the voice of your soul asking to be heard. Carl Jung Philosophy tells us that integration, not perfection, is the goal of the human journey. We are not meant to transcend our humanity, but to embrace it fully, to hold both sorrow and joy in the same breath and call it life. When you stop running from the darkness, you discover it was carrying the light all along. And in that moment, when acceptance replaces avoidance, you begin to sense a peace that does not depend on circumstance, a stillness that is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of understanding. You realize that feeling deeply is not a curse, but the beginning of wisdom, and that your sensitivity, once seen as weakness, is the compass guiding you toward wholeness. The shadow was never your enemy, it was the hidden half of your strength. Once you have seen your shadow, you can never unsee it. The illusions that once comforted you, they dissolve like fog under morning light. And though clarity feels freeing, it also demands responsibility, because awareness is not enough, it must become action. Carl Jung Philosophy teaches that transformation begins not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of honesty, the willingness to pause before reacting, the courage to admit, yes, that darkness lives in me too. To integrate the shadow is to walk toward humility. It's to understand that you are neither angel nor demon, but something infinitely more complex. a human being who contains both the storm and the sky. The transformation begins when you stop trying to be good and start striving to be whole. That means listening to your anger before it becomes destruction, letting your jealousy show you where you feel unseen, allowing your sadness to teach you how to love without illusion. Every emotion, once acknowledged, transforms from poison into medicine. Integration is not a single act of enlightenment. It is a daily practice of awareness, of looking inward with the same tenderness you offer to others. When you feel rage rising, don't shame it. Ask what it protects. When you feel envy burning, don't condemn it. Ask what dream it is pointing toward. When you feel despair, don't run from it. Ask what truth it is trying to tell you. Each of these moments is a doorway back to yourself. Carl Jung Philosophy reminds us that the shadow becomes destructive only when it is ignored. But when embraced consciously, it becomes a source of vitality. It gives you depth. It roots you in authenticity. The world tells you to stay positive. But real peace is not the denial of pain. It's the ability to hold pain with understanding. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength, which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." The Stoics knew what Jung later confirmed, that wisdom does not come from running from emotion, but from facing it with calm curiosity. Imagine relationships built upon this awareness. No longer projections, but partnerships. No longer demands for perfection, but invitations for authenticity. You no longer expect others to carry the weight of your unhealed wounds, because you've met them yourself. The same principle applies to leadership. The greatest leaders are those who have faced their own darkness. They do not command through fear, they lead through presence. They understand that to see clearly in others, you must first see clearly in yourself. Even in solitude, integration continues. When the night is long and silence feels infinite, you will meet yourself again, not as the fragile person who once hid, but as the witness who can hold both pain and peace without collapsing into either. Transformation is not a moment of glory, it is a lifetime of returning to truth, returning to humility, returning to the quiet inner voice that whispers, "This too is me," and in that acceptance, the war within you begins to end. Not because you have conquered your darkness, but because you have befriended it. You learn that strength is not found in suppression, but in understanding. That compassion, when extended inward, creates the space for freedom. Carl Jung Philosophy says the goal is not to be perfect, but to become real. And reality, raw, flawed, and luminous, is where the human spirit finally breathes. The shadow was never something to destroy. It was something to integrate, to hold close, to learn from. And in doing so, you begin to live not as a divided being, but as a whole one. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the struggle ceases. Not because the darkness has vanished, but because you have stopped fighting yourself. The storms within still move, but now you watch them, with the calm of one who knows they will pass, and that behind them the sky was never truly broken. This is peace, not the absence of feeling, but the acceptance of it. A surrender not to weakness, but to truth. You begin to see that your depth was never a burden. It was a doorway, that every sorrow was shaping you, hollowing space within you for compassion to grow. Carl Jung Philosophy teaches that what we deny controls us, but what we accept transforms us. And through that acceptance, a subtle light begins to rise, not blinding, but soft, like dawn after a sleepless night. You realize that you are no longer ashamed of your sensitivity. You are no longer apologizing for your tears, because you see now they were never symbols of fragility, but of connection. The capacity to feel deeply is the evidence that your heart has remained alive in a world that often forgets how to feel at all. Carl Jung Philosophy whispers that the soul heals not by escaping darkness, but by making a home within it. And you, who once feared your depth, have become its keeper. You move through the world differently now, quieter, surer. You understand that everyone you meet carries their own hidden wars, their own shadows behind the smile. And because you've met yours, you no longer need to judge theirs. Compassion blooms where certainty once lived. Patience replaces pride. And in that stillness, you begin to recognize the sacred in everything, even in pain. For pain was never your punishment. It was your teacher, and what it taught you was this: to feel deeply is to live fully. You are not weak for feeling deeply, you are awake. And those who feel the depths of their being are the ones most capable of touching the depths of life itself. So let the world call you sensitive. Let them call you too emotional, too quiet, too deep. Because beneath those words lies a truth they have not yet learned, that to feel deeply is not to fall into darkness, but to carry the light through it.